She said she was ready when we are.
Okay, I'm not, I mean, I'm only going to jump in, I guess, if somebody, you know, only get a sheet in case somebody stops talking, and then I'll prompt, but...
Okay.
And whenever you're ready,
Okay, I'm ready.
begin.
Hello, my name is Lagina Metcalf, and I'm here at the old Morgan Hill Elementary School located at Dunn and Monterey. And my connection with this school, I started working here in 1957 as a school secretary. In the same office, in the front office, I was here for 27 years. I retired in 1985, and I have certainly seen a lot of changes in those times. When I first started, I only started working with the PTA, and then they called it the Mothers Club, and it was quite different then because most of the children that came here, their parents were farmers. And every year we'd have a school carnival, and everybody attended, and that's how we made our money to buy extra library books and all those sort of things that weren't furnished for us that we could get. And we always had, we used to have our own kitchen here. They did their cooking down in the cafeteria, a little kitchen, and then they served in the cafeteria, and then later it went to satellite lunches, and which they were done at the high school and then brought over for our children. And we had kindergarten through 8th grade when I first came, and then it changed. We only had kindergarten through the 6th grade. And during all those years that I worked here, I've worked for 12 different principals. I'm not sure you want all their names, but I have worked for 12 different principals and several teachers that I still keep in contact with all those years. And we felt like Morgan Hill School was kind of just a little family thing because we were all very close. And when one had to leave, it was kind of sad because we felt very bad when they had to leave because we were kind of a close family. And as I said, I've seen a lot of change, and it made me really sad when they decided to not use the school anymore, and they kind of stopped maintaining it. And actually the earthquake, when we had the bad earthquake, actually that did not do too much to this school. I know some people thought it did, but it didn't. Most of the damage on this school was done from water because of the drains on the top would plug with the leaves from the trees, and then they would, the water would just come down through and wreck the walls. And at one time there was water down the hallway where we couldn't even go to the cafeteria for lunch because there was so much water in here. But actually for the earthquake, there was not that much damage. Very little damage to this school during that earthquake.
What year was that?
Let me think. That was, I can't be. And as I said, I feel really bad that they didn't keep it. And we used to have substitute teachers that would come from other towns, and they loved the school because of the windows. Because most of your new schools now, they do not have windows. You know, they're all lighted inside, but they loved coming here because they liked the windows. They could see out, and they thought that was kind of neat because of this school.
What was it like in the time, during the years when you were here? You were talking before about the heating system.
Yes, we do have the boiler downstairs. There's the old-fashioned boiler downstairs, and that's how we were heated because, and then the radiators in the classrooms, they'd have to take the thing off the radiator and let the steam come out. And then when the steam came out, I'd go back and put the tops back on, and it would heat up the buildings. But that's how they were heated, and we didn't have carpeting in the rooms for a long time. It was just wood floors. And I know the custodians, they kind of liked it because Sam Moore was the first custodian when I was here, and he would come after school, after the classes was out. He would come over and he would do all the classrooms all by himself, he'd move the chairs, the students' desk to one side, and he'd sweep, and then he'd put them back. And then when they put the carpet in with the, he used the vacuum cleaners, he wasn't real thrilled about that because he thought it was kind of neat because it kept down the noise, but he kind of liked the wood floors, to keep the wood floors up. And he would be the one sometimes the radiator down, the old furnace downstairs would not work, and he'd go and give it a kick in the mornings to start it. And that was kind of unusual, but as I said, lots of memories in this old school, Morgan Hill School.
What comes to mind, you said there's lots of memories, what comes to mind is, a prominent memory? You were here a long time.
Yes, I was here.
There must be something that stands out.
I was here for a long time, and I guess just the memories that I have is just all the students, but then I felt like as the years went by, when some of the students that started here in kindergarten started bringing their own children in to register for kindergarten, I thought, oh, maybe it's time Mrs. Metcalf leaves on. But
what were some of those names of those students that come to mind to you?
The Bondys, I'm trying to think of some of them that.
Or some of the teachers?
Mrs. Thomas, the kindergarten teacher, Gertrude Thomas. She's just such a lovely person, and one of the memories I have of her, sometimes she would have, every morning she'd have 30 students, and then she'd have 30 more students in the afternoon. But sometime when she had parent conferences, she had all 60 students in her classroom. And I remember we had an assistant principal, and he came and he said there'd be no way she could handle 60 children. And I said, you go down to the room and just watch her and see what she does. And she did a lot of neat things with the children. She had music that she'd play, and they knew that it was time to take their mats and go down and take a nap. And then one really cute thing she did, she took a white sheet and had it on the floor. And then at that time, that was when those popcorn poppers popped. You know, you could open the pop. Well, she put that in the middle of this sheet, and the children would sit around it, and she'd pop the popcorn, and whatever come to them, they got to eat off this sheet. It was the neatest thing. She was one of the neatest teachers that I've ever known. And then we had Mrs. Cleveland, Mrs. Call, Mrs. Clouser, Dorothy Clouser. She taught here a number of years. Miss McKernan, Bill Forrester, Dottie Cadwallader. I could just name all kinds of teachers because memories, but the ones that were, when I first came, was the ones like Mrs. Rice and Mrs. Clouser and Mrs. McKernan, Mrs. Cole. And
who was your favorite principal?
Well, I had a lot of favorites. Bob Pedretti was sort of not the last principal, but he was a neat one. Had Jim McDonald, Ed Belay, Bill Forster, Ben Sassnet, Joanne Denbo. But my first principal was Ed Belay, and then Robert Rice. Gosh, I don't think I really had a favorite because they were all really, really neat principals.
What was the biggest emergency you had here?
We had I guess the biggest emergency we had was parents used to come and park across the street to pick up their children, and one day the little girl ran across and a car hit her, so that was really a sad thing. As far as I can remember, that's the only death that we ever had. We had a lot of broken arms and bee stings, and we had a few children. Once when they opened Jackson Oaks, the kids from there, when they used to come down, a lot of them had ticks because they had ticks up there in those hills. And that was kind of a new experience to know, what are we going to do about these ticks? But we had a way of getting them out. We had good school nurses, but At the last years, we didn't have a nurse on every campus, so you'd have to call them if there was an emergency. But no real emergencies.
How about your happiest memory here?
Oh gosh, I had a lot of happy. I think our school carnivals and the children's programs, which I feel they don't do too much, and we used to do those outside because we called that our patio area between the kindergarten, and we'd set up chairs, and then the children would perform in front of the classrooms up there where they could walk, and that was their stage. And so they did a lot of programs, and like I said, every year we had a carnival. That was our fundraiser, and that was fun. And in the early years, of course, the farmers, like I said, most of the children, a lot of the children, I should say, were from farmers. Their parents farmed, and they loved coming in. We'd usually have it on a weekend, on a Saturday night, and everybody took part. Everybody took part. In fact, there was times when we had our PTA meetings, I'm sure that we would have as many as 100 or 150 parents here. And that was one thing that I think has kind of changed, is because the parents were really involved and were very cooperative. And
How many grade levels did you say?
when I first started here, it was kindergarten through 8th. And then it changed from kindergarten to 6th. And then they moved the 6th grade, so the last year's was kindergarten through the 5th.
And that means they had play equipment in the back. What did it look like?
Yes, they had the playground in the back. They had swings and tether balls and baseball fields and basketball. That was about the extent. The last year I worked, they started soccer. That was the first year they had soccer. So, but it was mostly just, and of course in the early years, the teachers did the yard duty. You know, they not only taught, but they went out at recess time and at lunchtime. And then the later years, they hired, forgot what they were called.
Yard duty?
Yard duty people. They had yard duty people. So, and still some of the teachers would go out. But in this school, before I came, there was an auditorium with a stage. And then eventually the auditorium was made into a cafeteria, and then the stage was closed off. And at one time it was the district office. And then the district office moved down into a room. So we've had the district office here in this old school at one time.
Where? Just in the auditorium?
It was in the library. Yeah. They took the auditorium, which was the auditorium, and they divided it into 2 rooms. And the room that the district office went in also went upstairs, which we called upstairs, which was the stage at one time, but we called it upstairs. And that eventually was the teacher's room. Teachers, they had their teacher's room was here at one time, but only a couple of years in one of the classrooms. But I know Robert Rice, he went to school here in 1906 in this same room that we're sitting in. And then he was principal.
Wow.
You know the Morgan Hill School, it's proposed that the building is going to be moved, the honors and hail. Do you have any thoughts on that or comments?
Well, yes, I do. I don't know how many people read my article in the paper, but I felt really, had a very different opinion of moving this school. I can't imagine them spending that amount of money to move this old school. And as far as keeping it as historical, once it's left here, as far as I'm concerned, the history's gone, because the trees in the front, the big trees in the front, is really part of the historical part of this old Morgan Hill School. And I feel that if it would have been maintained in the past years, it could have been kept here in this place as a school or something, but I think once it's moved, and I felt real bad about seeing us spending that kind of money to move the school.